All right, hello everyone. You're listening to Castbitten, a Dungeon Synth podcast, and I'm the host Trev. And I'm so happy to be recording another episode after quite a while. And today we've got Joshua from Blade of Kino with us. Blade of Kino is awesome. They recently had their debut release. It's an EP titled Balance, which is just absolutely excellent. It's so cool. It's this nice fusion of ambient music with dark synthy kind of tone, even some black metal elements in there. It's really great. You just heard the opening track from it, and that's titled Foggy Coast, which is a real favorite of mine. So yeah, welcome to the show, Joshua. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to dive in. You actually provide a lot of insight into this album in the description on Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's something that I really appreciate when I see a release. It's kind of nice to get that a bit of backdrop and context. So maybe to start the conversation out, do you mind just reiterating some of the ideas that you covered there, kind of about the name balance and the multiple meanings that word has in the context of this release to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. So it's a dual meaning. So I guess I kind of set out with an intention for the album was just kind of for me. And that's where the album name came from, Balance, right? So it was about just when I was writing it, there were so many things I had to balance in my life. You know, I was finishing up school. I was trying to manage being an artist with, keeping my relationships healthy, making sure, that I continue hanging out with my partner and, staying in touch with friends and family. And some of that stuff could definitely fall by the wayside when I would get into my artistic practice a lot. So yeah, it was just about me sort of learning and growing to keep everything in check, and not having one thing completely take over my life while everything else falls to the wayside. So that's where balance came for me. And this album was very much sort of a challenge, I suppose, to myself to just try and keep everything in check while also just, how do I explain that? Keeping everything in check while also trying to just keep my artistic integrity there as well and not burn out. Right. I think that was another thing too, just not burning out on a project. And for the second meaning, it's very much just a listening intention for the audience. I very clearly state that I would like you to put on headphones and lie down or sit or, just get comfortable and just listen to it front to back, no skips, and just try and see where it takes you. And just listen to it that way.
Yeah, I love that second point. I feel like it's understood that that's usually the fullest way to kind of take in an album, but I think to outright say that is a good reminder that it's great to listen to music that way. I think that, got it pulled up now, you say trust that the music will guide you into another world.
Yeah.
That's great. And to your earlier points about the more personal meaning of balance, I don't know, it's exciting that you're able to integrate these ideas of self-growth in your personal life in with a more, wider picture intended for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you were writing the songs, were you thinking about this term balance, or is that something that more you took a look retroactively in the idea came to you?
Yeah, I think it was more retroactive. What I found really interesting about Dungeon Synth when I got into it was how sort of visual and gripping it was, and when I was listening to it. And then when I started writing it, all the tracks, the track names are based off of the visuals that I would get from them. So I found when I was writing them, I was personally being kind of transported to these places, as it was coming out. Yeah. So
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really only afterwards when I had finished the project that I had been like, oh, this is how I did it, and I needed that balance to finish this album. And so that's when that second meaning kind of came to fruition.
Oh man, I love hearing that. I feel like I can relate to that. So as I'm writing music, I feel like I'm listening and extracting things from whatever I'm listening to at the moment, and it really creeps into my stuff. It's nice to hear that there's such a direct influence there, and especially the track titles themselves, because to me, all the track titles in your album,
Mm-hmm.
they do feel very evocative. There's a lot of imagery that would associate with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's nice. It's nice to hear the way that the genre kind of impacted all of those.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's kind of one and the same. When I think of Dungeon Synth, it's just such a visual experience across the board. Every album I listen to, it's just everything feels so dreamy, and like I've stepped into another world. And I really think that's what drew me to it. So to be able to write something and have that come across for other people shows me that I've succeeded, and that's
Yeah, absolutely.
and I really, it makes me happy to hear that other people feel the same when they listen to it.
Yeah, and we're kind of diving into some of those ideas in the just when we were chatting pre-show.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like the genre. It's very. It's not just about the music and the sound itself. It's kind of the whole package of. I don't know, like transporting you to a vivid other world like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's pretty I don't know, quintessential to the genre. We're kind of talking about maybe where that came from and how it impacts a lot of people's projects in the way that it's not just a release of music, but really building an identity around a project.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of spurred you mentioning that Blade of Kino is definitely that. It's not just a cool name, it's some very conceptual idea
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
connected to the music. Is that something you mind talking a little bit more about?
Oh yeah, of course. So yeah, Blade of Kino, something that I always found really difficult was artist names and just
Mm-hmm.
project names in general. It's always really hard.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, the name Blade of Kino came to me before I had any concept around it, which I found kind of interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I was just it just sounded cool when I said it. I was like, oh, Blade of Kino, what does that mean? And
Yeah, it's a
then
good place to start. Just
yeah,
sounds fun to say.
yeah, totally. And yeah, so I just kind of explored it more, and I had actually used a journaling RPG to flesh out the story of the Blade.
Oh no
I
way.
can talk about that if you like.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe even just start with what exactly you mean by a journaling RPG.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I'm a big tabletop nerd. I just
Yeah.
love RPGs so much. The whole album is really influenced by a lot of my RPGs that I play and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, a journaling RPG is a solo game usually, and it's the game will give you prompts, um, and you just kind of write based off of those prompts. So Blade of Kino was fleshed out by using this game called Artifact, which is really cool, and you play a sentient item essentially. So
Okay.
it could be like a sword or a shield or a tome or an instrument in a fantasy world, and you basically play as this weapon through hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years of its life history. And the item gets owned by they're called keepers, so people who wield the items, and these people can use them for good or bad. And with the prompts of the game, you get to kind of decide what that narrative is and how it plays out. I won't go too much into the rules exactly, but the rules allow you to just kind of come up with these cool story hooks and endings that you
Yeah.
maybe would have not thought of originally. Yeah, and what I found really interesting about that is in the game it wants you to pause and put on this soundtrack, and the soundtrack represents a certain amount of time. So maybe it represents 100 years, and it's 3 minutes long or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wants you to sit and meditate as the item for 100
Oh
years.
man.
So I would be journaling this game, and then a point in the story where the blade itself was lost in this river, and I think I decided to leave it there for 100 years. So I was meditating for I think 3 to 6 minutes, just imagining what it was like to be this item or this weapon at the bottom of this river. And it was just a really surreal experience. And Yeah.
I
It was
can
just
imagine. Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
was quite
great.
trippy. Yeah, so I really liked it. Meditation is a big part of my life, and it is always a big part of my art too. So it goes along with the intention of it as well. So
Yeah, I
coming
can really
back,
see all that coming together.
yeah, yeah. So that's how I use that system to help flesh out the story. So I'll go into the story itself.
Sure,
um,
please.
yeah. So the Blade of Kino is this weapon that was designed by this blacksmith named, I just called him the artist, and
Okay.
this blacksmith created this weapon specifically to be broken, essentially. So it came out of the forge rusted and broken already, and it's kind of imbued with the essence of this god named Kino, and Kino is the god of balance in all things. So the idea is that uh, people can wield the blade, but if you go and try and grab too much power, or your hubris gets too large, the blade fails you in your time of need.
I
So in one of the
see.
stories, a noble had used the blade, or a disgraced noble had used the blade to take back a kingdom that he thought was his. And when he finally reached his goal, um, there was an assassination attempt against him. And instead of the blade allowing him to defend himself, the blade broke and he was killed in that engagement. And so
Oh man.
every story of everyone who ever held the blade kind of ends in tragedy, because a lot of them try and go for too much power. And by the
Right.
end of the story, the blade is nothing but a hilt and rust. And yeah, so that's the Blade of Kino.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I absolutely love extremely elaborate high concept things like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful to hear. Is it kind of my first reaction to that? So that's a very elaborate, extravagant plot.
Mm-hmm.
As you're doing this journaling RPG system,
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm thinking, if you're able to articulate it, how much of that comes about through the system? Like, is it just a very small set of prompts, and then most of it is coming from you?
So
I hope I'm explaining the idea
no.
right.
I
Yeah.
get you. I get you. It's a small set of prompts. You get prompts for the type of person who wields the weapon. So it could be
Okay.
kind of a good or bad person, and it'll give you prompts for some events that might occur. But they're left somewhat abstract, so it's more of a writing exercise than anything.
Writing exercise is a
Yeah.
great way to put it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool to me. And I can
Yeah.
see that I mean, I guess you extended it beyond like a narrative writing
Mm-hmm.
exercise into other types of art, into your music.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
that's great. That's so exciting. And then I suppose into the visual artwork as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you mentioned your partner did the artwork, right?
Yeah. She did. Yeah. She did the
It's
cover.
incredible. They did a terrific job.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember when you first shared it, all of our friends were enamored with it and really excited by it.
Yeah, I mean, she just nailed it out of the park. Really, just so well.
Yeah,
And I think a big part of the album's success is that cover. I think it's very unique and very gripping when you look at it. Um, and
yeah, I agree.
still very much her style, which I think is just great. And
Oh, yeah.
that was our first project that we ever worked on together as a couple. And
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah, we're very happy with it. We call it our first art baby. So
Your first art baby. That's
yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
Yeah, it turned out great, and I think you're right about for better or worse, with how quickly music can be released. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but that's the first thing that you're going to see in a
Hmm.
sea of releases. And it
Yeah.
helps to have something that's unique and high quality. Is something I was talking about with a friend yesterday, actually, is seeing high quality cover art kind of
Hmm.
primes me to expect the music to be high quality, like something that was very carefully tended to.
Hmm.
It's nice to see that here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, big shout out to my partner again for just absolutely nailing that cover.
For sure,
You
yeah.
know, yeah, I'm surrounded by designers, like graphic designers and branding people and stuff like that. So I really couldn't get away with it, even if I wanted to. Um, but yeah, yeah, the branding and the cover really helped with it. So I'm very lucky to have people around me that are much more talented in areas that I lack skill in.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
The kind of coming back to something that you said earlier
Mhm.
about you were mentioning meditating is an important part of your life. I know in
Yeah.
the notes here, you mentioned that this whole work was written as a meditative piece.
Hmm.
Um, I guess, can you talk a little bit about that interaction of meditation and music and how coming into something with the idea of writing meditative music may impact your writing process?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think what I really wanted was for other people to experience the way that I experience a lot of music that I hold really close to myself.
Yeah.
I I will listen to a lot of albums lying down with headphones on and eyes closed. I used to do this all the time as a kid, and it was just always such a good experience. And I was doing it before I even knew really what meditation was, and looking back, realizing that that was a meditative process for me.
Right.
So yeah, I really just kind of wanted to uh, give people permission to experience that as well. And yeah, yeah, that's
That's
basically
great.
the synthesis of it.
Yeah. And I listen to music focused a lot of the time, I think, but I personally don't do what I would consider like meditating as I listen to music. So as a normal listener,
Hmm.
seeing that in the notes kind of does prompt me to approach the album in a way that maybe I wouldn't normally do. And
Hmm.
that's exciting and unique to me.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of modern streaming services, you can
Right.
skip a song or something like that, and I think this is why the cassette scene that's woven into Dungeon Synth is so important because you can't skip, if you have to commit to something, and I think that commitment changes just how you listen to it, and it makes you just more present. So yeah, I think I just wanted to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point too about the cassettes. That's something that I was a little taken aback by as I was first getting into the scene. That it's so uh, I guess present within the community to listen to music that way. But that's a great point. The idea of skipping between songs and fast forwarding and such is totally not fitting of the medium, and that restriction's kind of nice in that way. Like you
Hmm.
said, you're forced to take it in as an entire piece and not song by song.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. There's a lot of bands that, I think Tool does that a lot. They often say that they don't want you to pick a song by song. They just want you to go through the album because for me, it's like I wrote it with the intention of
Right.
a front to back, right? So I mean, you can do what you want, but but like
Of course,
but
yeah.
I wanted you to listen to it this way, and it's there's a lot of effort, even just picking the track number, what track goes where.
Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of thought that goes into that.
Did you find yourself changing the track numbering?
um, you know what? Not as much as I thought I would.
Oh
I feel
wow.
like I got kind of lucky and kind of found it pretty quick. That kind of goes into the whole. I feel like I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, but I think it was kind of a um, what's the word? Uh, you can edit some of this out if I'm stuttering too much.
Oh, no worries. It's
Okay.
very relaxed, very casual.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man, what's the word? I guess just an intention for me and a practice for me for this album was just to kind of roll with it. Don't think about it too much. Don't think about the mix too much or the master
That's
too much
great.
or the track list too much. Just kind of do what's intuitive to me. And that was another big part of being able to even get this done, because I've had so many projects that have just failed, just failure to launch on so many things. And
that's such an important lesson, honestly,
yeah,
to share to any listeners.
yeah, just yeah, if I can give advice to anyone who's like struggling with this, it's like just care less in some aspects. Like obviously,
Yeah.
like do your best and everything, but at some point, man, you just gotta put it out and
Yeah.
not worry about it too much. And that's really hard as an artist, because I think a lot of times we're really trying to curate what other people experience. That's kind of the point. Like
Sure.
I have an intention for you, and I have an experience in mind for you when you listen to this, but really, you're never going to be able to experience it the exact way that I want you to, because you are your own person. And when I release something, it just doesn't become mine anymore. It becomes everyone else's. Everyone who takes
Totally.
it, yeah, everyone who takes it, it becomes their own experience. And you can set intention, but if people are going to gravitate towards it and like it, it's because they like it in their own way. And I think for me, that takes a lot of pressure off as an artist.
It's a nice way to think about it.
Yeah.
In almost a relieving way that once you give it out, it's just out in the world.
Yeah, and you can move on. That was a big thing too, because I had the album done for a month, I think, before it was released, and
Oh yeah.
I think I had kind of almost fully detached from it by the time it was out, and and I was like, oh, thank God, like I don't really
That's
have to
funny.
stress about it that much. But this is
Yeah.
my first major release ever, and I've been a musician for God, like since I was like 8 years old, and and it took a lot of time to get to this place, and it was really interesting, watching myself go through the steps of releasing this and checking my own anxiety levels and everything.
Yeah.
Um,
And I imagine people that are taking the time to really learn instruments and learn
mhm,
mixing and writing on computers and stuff. They're
yeah,
probably more of a perfectionist attitude than average.
hmm,
Just guessing there. So I think it's important to hear that letting go is so important, and then to kind of hear the way that you're saying, once it's out is a good thing. That's a nice way to interpret it.
yeah, because I think you can move on. I think once it out, it's like the band-aid's off. And it just, you can't really control where it goes or what it does. So it's like, I don't know, why worry about it? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned that this is your first major release of
Hmm,
any type of music.
hmm,
One kind of thing that came to mind there. So this album, if I'm right, I think it's a little over 40 minutes,
hmm.
and definitely within the genre and community, nobody bats an eye at shorter releases. But I noticed that you still consider this an EP. I'm just kind of curious what your thought process was behind making that distinction there.
Um, you know what? I think it was me not understanding the difference of EP and LP, to be quite honest.
Oh, I hope that
Uh,
it's not rude to point
no,
that
no, no.
out then.
You know what? I honestly didn't even notice. So EP stands for what?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Is it extended play, extended
Yeah.
press?
Okay, wait. So there's EP and LP. And LP is long play?
I
Or so?
think,
Oh, I don't
to
know.
be honest, I'm in no position to
Yeah.
to say
I,
this.
I will. We'll just chalk it up to a branding error.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Nah, it makes it stand out. No,
Yeah.
no worries
Wait.
there.
So is EP generally shorter? Is that the
That's
rule?
my interpretation.
Okay.
Honestly, you have me doubting myself now,
Okay.
though.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Maybe we'll
who's to
maybe we'll just
say?
move on.
Maybe we'll just move on. Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I did have one more point on the idea of a meditative piece, if
Oh
we
yeah. Please.
can, if we're looking for an excuse to go back to an earlier point.
Always.
So
Yeah.
definitely, I think it's safe to say a ton of this album falls into the like ambient
Hmm.
realm, and that matches the meditative idea. But while staying with that feel, there are plenty of moments where there's strong and distinct melody.
Yeah.
Sometimes in subtle ways, like I think in Ancient Weapon, it feels still like implied and in the backdrop. But then also there's times when the melody is definitely in the forefront of the mix in tracks like Foggy Coast and I think Traveler's Rest. I guess I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about how you write your melodies and if you're gonna, I guess what you're thinking when you start writing a track, if you have a set idea of how ambient versus how like at the forefront the melodies will be.
Yeah, so I definitely try and not come into a track with any idea of what to do. I find that limits me quite a bit sometimes. Not all the time. I think Dark Castle is a kind of an example of me going into a track with an intention. And to me, that track is the most sort of bombastic and standout one on the album.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's definitely the most different on the album. But I don't know. I think I just try and follow the song. You know, I really don't. I try and stay as intuitive as possible. I think, you know, when I'm writing a song, I'll try and start with something that I get excited about. I'll try and start with a sample that I think is cool, or just something that kind of maybe brings in another idea that I'm hearing. But my process itself, I don't know, it's kind of nebulous. I feel like it changes all the time, and I can never really pin it down too much. So, yeah, a lot of times when I'm writing, what I'll do is like I said, I'll try and just follow the song. But a lot of times I'll just get up from my computer or wherever I'm working, and I'll just lie down on the floor and I'll just close my eyes and I'll just kind of let the song, like what I have, just kind of run through. And then sometimes I'll just kind of hear what needs to come next. And then I'll just go back to the computer and it'll either come out or it won't. And then I'll go back to the floor for a while, and then I'll go back to the computer. That's kind of what it's like.
It's great.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know. I don't want to say strange, but just a much more intuitive process for me in that sense. Yeah.
Stepping away really clears it and lets you think about it without the keyboard in front of you. I take walks a lot of the time when I'm hung up.
Yeah, walks are huge. Just getting away from the computer. I honestly think the computer is the worst thing you could do to write with sometimes. Like it just being in front of a screen, it just zaps everything. You know, there's icons everywhere. There's like a million buttons. It's not like, for my brain, it's not good. I just need to go I just need to lie down on the floor and close my eyes. So
would you say the songs generally they start with an idea and evolve from there versus having a firm plan from the beginning?
Yeah, I'll try and sample a lot. I'll usually start off making my own samples. Like very few sounds on the albums are synthesizers. It's usually samples that I make.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you talk about that sampling process?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's mostly just recording stuff I find around me. So like, I don't know. I think there's a couple like drum sounds on there that were layered, like cups and me banging on the desk and stuff like that.
Neat.
A lot of times I'll find like sample packs like of synthesizers, you know, and I'll grab it and I'll just pitch it down, and I'll just start to manipulate it in a way that's sort of unnatural. And so just lots of sampling in that sense of just trying to find stuff other people or other synths that other people have like posted, but very few actual like VSTs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of the secret recipe you want to spill, but where do you go to find samples of synthesizers versus like VST synthesis?
Yeah, so usually what I'll do is like sometimes I'll just look up like really cheap Casio sounds and just steal those. And then there's a lot of stuff on there that were just like Casio stuff. You know, if you just Google like Casio SL1 or whatever brand it is, sample pack, usually someone has made one. And they're great. I think there's like freesounds.org and stuff like that. Like if you just do a little digging, you can find stuff. But what I really recommend is getting just a microphone or something and just sample your house, sample everything in your house, and just try and get really experimental with it, and I think drone and ambient really thrives under that type of process. In terms of like processing the sample itself, I wouldn't say it's too complicated. I usually will pitch things down a lot. You can usually find really good bass sounds that way. Just some light compression, reverbs, some delays, saturation helps. I think the less complicated, the better in a lot of these scenarios. But yeah, I guess my biggest advice is just kind of screw around until you find something that excites you, a sound that you're like, oh, that's really cool. And it immediately will bring you like a visual image or something. That's when you've got something good. And
that's too cool.
And then just roll with that,
Yeah. And when you do this, I know you mentioned like repitching the samples.
Mm-hmm.
Do you generally just pitch to a specific note that you want to use, or do you like repitch it across an octave and use a sample player to play it like a keyboard?
I use a sample player. I use Reaper. Okay. I know you're a big Reaper fan. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Reaper for life, honestly. So they have the Ria Samp like 5,000 or whatever. It's a really good sampler. So what I'll do is, usually if it's like a synthesizer sample, it'll be pitched to C. So I just make sure it matches up on the sampler to C. And that way you just have a really easy like way of playing the correct notes. And that's usually how I'll pitch it down, is I'll just play it lower on the keyboard.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, nothing too complicated, just resampling stuff and pitching it.
And that's too cool. I don't think I've ever heard or talked to anyone that just generally uses their own samples like that. Mm-hmm. Have you dove into any of the sample collecting websites? Like recently I've been really into Piano Book. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, no, I'm not. No.
Oh, I know that there's some niche communities online where they do sampling of their own and then share them around and kind of communicate with that. It seems like you're able to do it all on your own, so maybe that's not necessary.
Oh, trust me, I love any database that anyone can give me of samples. I'm like insatiable when it comes to sample hunting.
Yeah, it gets like sometimes I'm worried I'm distracting myself by finding sounds instead of writing music with them.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, a balance, no pun intended. I think just trying to find, I think that you get a unique sound too, because you kind of know what you want, right? So if you can make your own sounds and kind of get in the ballpark of what you need, I think that will make you unique as an artist and help you stand out a bit.
Yeah, that's so wild.
Yeah.
Do you ever use like outdoor samples, like field recorder type things?
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately I didn't have a field recorder, so I couldn't get my own, but I would find ones online of just creaks. There's a couple tracks on there that are like creek sounds and stuff like that. So so I like using like outdoor Foley stuff.
Yeah,
it gives it quite a vibe.
Maybe in a grander sort of way, it seems like concepts from nature are fairly important to your release, at least on a somewhat subtle level. That's what I take in. The overall sound feels like there's a level of influence from the natural world. And I know from what we've talked about, you seem like a pretty outdoorsy person with an outdoorsy lifestyle. Can you talk a bit about the role of nature in your music, if it plays a significant one?
Yeah, I would say it does play a role in it, but not in the way you might think, I guess. A lot of the inspiration for this album came a lot from RPGs, tabletop role-playing games, right? And a lot of the imagery is based off that. And I think now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the imagery is very outdoorsy, right? When you play tabletop stuff, like you're outdoors a lot. So I feel like that's actually kind of where it came from. I'm not I'm like somewhat outdoorsy. I wouldn't say I'm not not like a shut-in or anything. nor
Okay.
am I like an adventure man, but I mean,
Okay.
I like a good hike, you know?
Sure. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is funny that you mentioned that. Like, maybe that's just more of an artifact of writing based on a world that doesn't have modern technology. It's kind of inherently,
Hmm.
I don't know, in a dungeon or in the woods, the two options. Kind of like generally along those lines, I know that the YouTube channel, if I've got it right, it's called In the Woods, right?
Uh,
That
Into the Woods. Yeah.
Into the Woods. Okay,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
my bad.
I think it's Into the
That
Woods. Let me see if I'm correct.
but as you check into that, they published your album, and it seems like it had a huge impact on the reach of the album.
Yeah.
I think today you were saying, was it 10,000 streams in a fairly
10,000.
short
Yeah.
amount of time?
Yeah. So it is In the Woods, by the way. You were right. I was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. 10,000 streams. Yeah. In
that's nuts.
less than a month. And I
Less than a
honestly
month.
can't believe it.
Yeah, that's
I
so
feel,
cool.
thank you. Yeah. I feel almost like, I guess almost like a little like undeserving is the word.
Oh,
You know what I
no.
mean? I don't know. It's just, I'm like, you know, first album and stuff like that. And it just, the reception has really blown me away. Everyone's been so nice, and they take the time to write reviews and just listen to it, you know, with
Yeah.
the intention that I set. And I really can't believe the community and just how great everyone is. And, you know, part of the reason I started writing Dungeon Synth was because of how just accepting the community was. It just felt like so much less pressure to write Dungeon Synth
Right.
than what I was writing prior, you know, and I've just been, yeah, just really blown away. And it's been so nice just hearing everyone's kind words about the album and downloading it and listening to it. And yeah, you know, if you told me like a month ago that would happen, I don't think I really would have believed you, you know? So
That's too cool. That's
yeah.
such a, I don't know, such a nice motivating story.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any direct effects of getting published on that YouTube channel that stand out to you? Like, is it a clear before and after in that regard?
That's a good question. You know, I haven't really kept up on the analytics on Bandcamp or anything,
I
so I'm
see.
not really 100% sure. But you know, I would say probably some like just Instagram followers and people who just, I don't know, supported through Bandcamp and stuff like that. Like I got more sales than I was expecting just from
Hmm.
random people, you know, and I don't know where they came from, you know, where they found it, but
Right.
um, yeah, I wouldn't say like I yeah, there have been some effects, direct effects from it, but I couldn't tell you exactly. I couldn't pin it down for you.
Sure, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
And is that the type of thing that they just found the album and reached out to you, or do you get in touch with them?
No, I get in touch with them. I'm quite
Oh.
self-advocating. That's another advice I want to give people is like
Yeah,
you
that's
need to
great.
advocate for yourself because no one else is going to do it. You know, don't wait for pages to reach out to you or labels to reach out to you. Just reach out to them. Do it first.
Yeah,
You know, like just get on it.
absolutely.
Yeah, because you
Um,
know, a lot of these artists' work are so good, you know, and it deserves to be out there. And so, yeah, just do it. Just go for it. The worst they can say
yeah,
is no, or they don't get back to you.
that's
Nothing.
huge advice. Honestly, that
Yeah.
was something that I think uh, I kind of misplayed when I first started. And
Hmm.
on an early episode, I had Elminster on the show, and that was something that they mentioned. This,
Hmm.
I think the same phrase. Even you got to advocate for yourself in the sea of music,
Yeah.
and no one's going to be offended when you do.
No.
It's just what you have to do to make sure you get noticed, and I think that's really important. Both to hear that you need to do it, and to hear that you're allowed to do it,
Yeah.
and you don't seem like a dork or like you're being annoying if you ask if someone's interested in sharing your album.
Yeah. No. No. You really have to do it. And I think it becomes easier when you have a community that is really accepting and open to share it. You know, it's quite cyclical in that way of just having the right people around you who support you.
Yeah, having such a welcoming community really, like, it just makes the world of difference. It's so
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah.
Just they're already okay with taking things with a grain of salt as they are,
Hmm.
and I don't know, that goes a long way as well.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the most beautiful things about Dungeon Synth. That kind of reminds me of a lot of the punk scene too. Is like how accepting it is of everyone of every skill level. You know, because
Yeah.
you can have complete beginners, you know, who don't even know how to play a note. You know, and they want to try it, and the community being like, yeah, go for it. Show me what you've done, and ask questions if you need help. You know, that makes a world of difference for someone starting out, and I think it's really
Yeah,
important to,
that acceptance is cool.
yeah, and I think it's important to keep that sort of at the forefront of the community, because to me that's the reason I started in it, was just how nice everyone was. So I just want to keep that going. You know.
Yeah, and that's actually a great pivot point. So you had mentioned as you were writing to this album, you were really exploring a lot of dungeon synth, but
Hmm.
you've also been making music since you were 8. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about other? Sounds like punk is maybe like a formative genre for you. Can you just talk a little bit about your musical identity and your foundations there?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've been playing music for a long time. I started off with piano, and then I did pipe band stuff. Actually, I was a snare drummer for a long time.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was fun. I definitely got kind of burnt out on it as I got older. You know, when I got to high school, I picked up the guitar, and it was like nothing else mattered at that point. You know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you could probably see like a direct decline in my school grades as soon as I picked up the guitar. But yeah, that was really, you know, the first instrument that I just fell in love with. You know, and yeah, just playing in high school, and you know, starting off with like classic rock, like Zeppelin and AC/DC
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and then I got really into the more metal side of stuff. I think like Children of Bodom and stuff like that was like kind of the first like metal
Okay.
bands I started listening to. You know, um, and yeah, I just kind of kept playing and got really into prog for a long time. Still am, you know,
Right. Yeah, you
and
mentioned
then
Tool earlier.
yeah, Tool, and like Between the Buried and Me and
Sure.
bands
Yeah.
like that, you know. Yeah, so playing a lot of that stuff, and that's really where I grew as a musician, was in the metal scenes. You know, I played in bands when I lived in Montreal, and you know, played in some in the city that I live in now, and yeah, I actually kind of went through like an identity crisis leading up to moving into Dungeon Synth. I don't want to get too like dramatic here, you know, but
No, no, please.
I'm gonna be a little
Yeah.
dramatic. It's kind of core to my being, you know. um, yeah, so just, you know, I was kind of just not liking the guitar anymore after fuck, like I don't know how many years of playing, like over 10 years, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I had a really hard time with that. I had a really hard time letting go of the guitar and branching out into other stuff. You know, I tried electronic music. You know,
Yeah.
I'd written techno music, and I did house music for a little bit, but to not really any great effect or love. You know, um, and I remember just putting it down for months, putting the guitar down for months, and just doing other stuff. That's when I got really into creative writing and stuff like that. And you know, I started running Dungeons and Dragons a lot, actually. You know, getting into RPGs.
Yeah.
So looking back, it's kind of like this perfect storm of getting into Dungeon Synth. Was this even the original question? I don't even remember.
It's evolving. I
All
think
right,
that
yeah.
it's still within the realm for sure,
Oh,
and
okay,
and that makes total sense.
yeah.
The both taking a break from I don't know, guitar focused music, which
Hmm.
is kind of its own lifestyle, and
Yeah.
getting into the more I don't know, mind exploring RPG world.
Hmm.
Perfect storm for ending up with this type of music.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And just, you know, really struggling. I think that was the thing. It was like really struggling to put stuff out with, you know, guitar based music. I feel like the bar is so high for quality, because
Sure, yeah.
I was doing prog metal, right? So it's like really technical and like all this stuff. And it was like I was like, I just can't keep up anymore. I think that was a realization I came to. I was like, I can't get the mix quality to the quality that I
Yeah.
want, or like, you know, there was just a bunch of stuff where I was just like, I'm just burnt out, you know. And so I put it down, and yeah, moving into like the creative writing and the RPG scene and stuff. And then finding Dungeon Synth was like just incredible, because I think before I put the guitar down, I had actually wanted to write a sort of fantasy album, a really fantasy inspired album. So what I was doing was I was writing music, and I was having all this artwork up, all this RPG artwork up that I really loved, that like really inspired me. And I was trying to write to that, and I was having a really hard time with it. And, it was just like another failed project, that I got burnt out on. So I was like, screw it. So I just put it down. And then, I think YouTube recommended me Cobalt, the album Cobalt, or the artist Cobalt, sorry. And then, Dungeon Synth archives page, and I was like, what is this? Because I was trying to find music for my RPG games, and I was like, this is really, really cool, And then, so I kind of got into it a bit more. I think I found the album, The Lunar Lexicon, on Dulmadir, I think is the album.
Yeah, that was a huge gateway for me as well.
Oh, man. The first time that was on, I was like, I have to make this. Like, I have to do something like this. And it was just, when I talk about a perfect storm, it's like everything clicked. I was like, I'm trying to achieve this fantasy album thing with the wrong approach. I was trying to do it with the guitar, and I was like, I don't need to do it with the guitar. I need to do it in some other way. I need to learn how to make Dungeon Synth, and I just got hyper obsessed, I just got really into it. And I found Arang, I think that's how you say it. He makes his sample packs, and it was like
so cool of him to do.
That's how I got into it. Like I know. Really? And it was like, if he hadn't had put that out, I don't think I really would have had the energy to do it, so I think Foggy Coast is all Arang samples. I'm pretty sure, because that was the first, that was the first Dungeon Synth song I wrote, and I was like, when it was done, I was like, oh, I can do this, and I have the energy to do this. And then, the rest is history. And I finished the album, and I was like, I can finish an album. I can complete projects that don't burn me out, and going back to the Dungeon Synth community, it helps so much because they're so nice and they're so welcoming, and I'd actually looked up, Dungeon Synth podcasts, and it was yours that came up.
Oh,
yeah. So I found the sample pack, then I was like, I'm sure someone has done a podcast. So I Googled that and found you, and I think the first episode I listened to was ROG, I think.
Oh, great. And, I think that was the first one I did.
Yeah, and then you posted the Discord, and then I've been just in the Discord ever since. And so
that's so cool. It's nuts how relatable that story was to me. The whole thing of it, it's very similar in a lot of ways. Getting burnt out on guitar, looking for something totally different. There's a lot of qualities to the genre that you wouldn't notice it at first, but it's so freeing when you realize it. And especially coming from a guitar background, which, like you said, is very competitive about very specific things. It's so freeing and open to just like I remember first getting into Arang, and I just thinking like, oh, you can just do whatever feels good.
Yeah.
And if you put attention to detail and make it nice, then it's accepted as music, even regardless of if it's like an accepted format or not. If it's high quality music that's effort has been put into it, then it just works. And
totally.
That was so freeing to me.
Yeah, it is extremely freeing. In between sort of putting down the guitar and finding Dungeon Synth, I came across this artist named Author and Punisher, and he's really cool. And he is like an industrial doom metal artist.
Okay.
But he makes all of his own instruments. So they're really crazy. Like, he has one that's like a joystick on a track, and when he pushes it forward, it plays a kick, and when he pulls it back, it plays a snare. And then he has like these huge aluminum things on these like rotators, and when he rotates it, it's just like this winding up, like huge grimy bass sound. And he just plays live like this crazy doom metal stuff. And I was watching that, and I was like, man, I am restricting myself so much creatively, in a creative sense. I was like, I can do the same realization as you. It's like, you can do whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter. You know, and people are gonna vibe, and some of them are not gonna vibe, and it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
you just gotta make it. And I think that's what's so nice again about the Dungeons is just like it gives you the freedom and the permission to just kind of do whatever you want. You know, you want to make
Yeah.
weird concept album, you want to make a weird noise screaming album with like 10-minute crow sound, like go for it. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
someone's
Get the
going to be
gross
like, this is the
sounds.
greatest album I've ever heard. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Right.
someone's going to
That's
like it, you
someone's
know?
thing.
And, but yeah, I think ultimately you have to make music for yourself and kind
Yeah.
of think about everyone else later. Because going back to what I said earlier, if like when it's out there, people take it for their own. So it's like, you might as well just make something you like because it's going to be
Right.
interpreted differently anyway. So,
And maybe I'm also just realizing I had burnt myself out on guitar a bit,
mhm,
but aside from the conceptual openness, uh, making music on your computer, like just from a technical mechanical standpoint,
mhm,
you have so much more ability to think of something and then execute it. Whereas on guitar, I feel like there's a lot of ideas that you can express and articulate very well, but then
mhm,
overall it's pretty restricting, with six strings, your four fingers.
mhm.
It's I don't know, five if you wiggle the thumb, I guess.
Yeah, if
But
you're Jimi Hendrix or something, yeah.
yeah, right. But
Yeah.
compared um to the openness of like I work in MIDI, something like
Mhm,
that, of being able to use tools on computers and also being able to slow down and like develop an idea and then edit it on a computer and take as much time as you want. It Yeah, just from a mechanical standpoint, that's something I find exciting about the genre, that you
mhm.
can really express yourself as articulately as you would like.
Yeah. Yeah, and you make a really good point about being able to slow down, and really take your time just developing your melodies or whatever, or your vibe that you're going for. And yeah,
Right.
I feel you. With the guitar, it was restricting in a sense. I guess restricting in what I was trying to do, right? Which I was trying to write that like fantasy type of
Yeah,
record,
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, it can be tough if you've kind of got the wrong tool for what you are looking to do. I think the lesson really is like, just don't be afraid to experiment all the time. Even with guitar, trying to, maybe you can try and make it sound like a synth or like a really ambient pad.
Yeah,
Like,
get crazy with some pedals.
yeah, like move. I don't know. Try and not think about it as a guitar, and think about it as just another vessel for your creativity.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
because I think the reason I got burnt out was just because like I think I had so much attachment to my identity as to being a guitar player,
Right.
and instead of taking a backseat and being like, oh, I'm just an artist and I can express myself in any number of ways, whether it's through music or writing or anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree. That makes a ton of sense.
Hmm.
So, as we're kind of starting to wind down and wrap things up,
Hmm.
can you give any details on what's next? If you've been working on more Blade of Kino stuff,
Yeah,
or other projects or other genres?
yeah. So funny enough, actually, I'm writing a record with Elavalon. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's
excellent.
like a sludge metal record. So I'm actually back on the guitar. Funny enough, with him.
Yeah, after all
After all of that, it's
that,
like,
well,
no,
you get
I
a
still,
refresher by
I
mixing it
know.
up.
Yeah, I think definitely doing the dungeon stuff like helped me just kind of come back to what I loved about the guitar.
Yeah,
And yeah, this feels like less pressure. So yeah, doing a project with that. We got a
you
single
said
coming
it's
out.
sludge metal.
Yeah, it's like sludge kind of
Oh
doom
man, for
kind of
someone
stuff.
that's
Yeah.
not, I'm very poorly acquainted with metal. What's the sludge metal sound? Can you describe it in elevator
Oh,
pitch?
really huge, grimy sounding guitars.
Okay.
Just everything about it is massive, massive drums, big guitars, dark sounding. It just, you know what? You ever heard of Stank Face?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard of
like when
stank
you
face.
listen to doom, it's just stank face essentially.
Okay,
Yeah, or doom
I
and
think I can
sludge.
picture
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess that would be the elevator pitch.
Okay, and you
Yeah.
said that's a split coming up.
Yeah, we're both working on it under another name called Barrow
Oh, that's
King.
too cool.
Yeah, so we're doing that, and then for Blade of Kino stuff, I think I'm going to keep it pretty hush right now.
Sure.
I'm keeping it. I'm still mood boarding it right now, to be honest.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I'm taking a lot more time with this one, but it's going to still be. I don't want to give too much away, but it's still going to be dungeon synth, I guess. you know, but it's going to be a lot darker, and it's going to be more of a package thing that you get with it. It's not if you just get like
Interesting.
the Bandcamp album, like if you just listen to the album on Bandcamp, you're not really going to get the full intended experience of it. So that's all I'm going to
Wow.
say right now, because
Wow,
it's
so much
very,
comes to
very
mind
early.
with that. That's exciting. That's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, I'm pretty excited. I got a couple like that are just concepts right now, but
Hmm.
down the road, we're talking like 2-3 years probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think I really applaud a lot of these artists in the community who can put out albums pretty frequently,
Right.
but yeah, if you're waiting on more Blade of Kino, it's going to be a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can relate to that as
Yeah.
well. I'm much more of a slow process.
Mm-hmm.
That's so exciting though. The mystery really does
Yeah, I
add to
gotta
that.
plant it now. I gotta plant it in
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
head
plant
now.
the seeds.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it should be good. I think honestly, like being on the other side of the balance release, I just kind of want to soak that in. I just want to live in the post released feelings for a while before I move on.
That's fair. It's nice that
Yeah.
you say that. It's such a distinct time.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's important too, because I think it's a good time for reflection and looking back and
Yeah.
seeing, not even just like what worked and what didn't, but just the experience as a whole and what you can take from it and what you can learn from it, and just incorporate that into your next project or your life or whatever suits you.
Yeah, especially to cap off an album that's kind of about personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a nice way to end it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all I've got in my notes. This has been such a nice conversation. It's been really one for the book. So much fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care. Good luck with all the future releases and everything. And thanks a ton for coming on and talking.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and I'll see you later.
All right. Yeah. Take care.
Bye.
Alright, sup friends. That was just so good. What a truly pleasant and insightful conversation with Joshua there. It's always so fun and interesting to hear about projects with such a deep and intense backstory, and I was really happy to learn so much about the work that went into making this release. There's definitely an attention to detail and balance that just makes it something truly special to me. So, you can find Blade of Kino on Bandcamp at bladeofkino.bandcamp.com. You can also listen to their album at the YouTube channel In the Woods. The whole thing's posted there. We didn't mention this on the show, but Tapes for Balance should be available through Vicious Mockery Records. That'll be available around May or so just keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you'd like to follow Blade of Kino on social media, they've got an Instagram account, and that's blade.of.kino. In Trev news, sorry I've been away for a while. Work and life have just been pretty nuts, and I kind of had to reprioritize for a bit. But I'm really glad to be back on the podcast, back to recording episodes, having fun talking to people. Something I have done, I recently participated in a charity compilation. It's being released on weargnomerecords.bandcamp.com, and it's titled You Meet in a Tavern. It includes a ton of wonderful musicians and friends of mine, and all of the profits from the release are going to the International Red Cross to help aid in the war in Ukraine. So I would definitely be really appreciative if you check that out. Otherwise, you can listen to other episodes of this podcast on all the major podcast spots, places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all of that. And you can also listen to my music at castbitten.bandcamp.com or on all the streaming sites there. I've also got a new video on YouTube, on the Castbitten YouTube page. It's another instructional one where I break down the track that I contributed to the collaboration. I have a ton of fun making those videos. I feel like some people like them, so if that type of thing is something you're interested in, maybe go check that guy out. And then, of course, if you'd like to keep up with myself in general and my projects, you can do that at Castbitten_ on Instagram. Alright, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks a ton to Joshua for coming on the show and for being such a great guest. Take care, everyone. Get out of here.